Our brain's always working on things, right? The brain is always trying to make those connections, and you can't come up with ideas and inspiration when you're trying to. That's the thing that we, as humans, especially as adults, we forget about. And we think, oh, no, I need to be productive. I need to be staying in this lane. And it may seem frivolous to binge watch stand-up comedy, or frivolous to go spend some time with your nieces in the mountains having snowball fights. But that's exactly what we need to get our creativity muscle back online.
What if the key to transformation lies in shifting your perspective? Hi, I'm Dr. Payal Beri. Welcome to Reframing Perspectives. Every conversation here is about one thing: how empathy changes the way we lead, connect, and create impact. Each episode, we get to explore deep, authentic conversations designed to expand your mindset. Whether you're looking to transform your leadership, deepen your relationships within your circle, your community, and friends, or gain clarity in your own personal growth, each episode will inspire you to see things differently and take action. If you're ready to challenge your thinking and embrace transformation, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. If there is anybody who knows how to play and bring the power of play into everything that we do as adults, it's Gary Ware. This was such an awesome conversation. And what I really loved about it, it's just, he brings such purity of fun. I think it's like so often that as adults, we have completely forgotten that it's okay to laugh. It's okay to be silly, and we have to be buttoned up, and that we have all these responsibilities. But what Gary shows is that actually by employing improv and playful methodologies, we actually become more creative. We become more confident. We collaborate better. We celebrate life in a way that just brings in, it just opens up this beautiful side of how we connect with compassion. This conversation for any of you who are trying to find ways to bring enjoyment back to your workplace, who are looking to think differently with your teams. This is just so, so powerful. Gary Ware, he's the founder of Breakthrough Play and the author of Playful Rebellion, Maximize Workplaces, Success Through the Power of Play. Just an absolute phenomenal facilitator and speaker. And I cannot wait for you to really listen into how he reshapes and reframes the way that we think about play and work.
Gary!
Hey!
So excited to talk to you because you are literally the king of fun. And It's the first time I saw you, the first time, we met just in May when you were presenting. And by far, in a room full of very serious people, there was just nonstop laughter and nonstop inspiration. And that's just beautiful, right? I feel like people, as we grow up, forget that it's okay to be silly, and it's okay, so I can't wait to just dive in with you about your journey to this path of being the king of play and, as you say, playful rebellion. And just what brought you here.
Yeah, let's go. I'm following your lead, and I'm happy to go wherever this conversation takes us. I know whatever it is, it's going to be amazing.
So tell me, let's just go here first. You had a TED Talk where you talk about how play saved your life and how you had intense burnout, and talk us about that. Talk us about pre-play. Talk us about Gary growing up, Gary, before you were in that space of play and seeing the power of that. What was that experience?
Yeah. So to set the stage, I think you and who's the people who are listening can relate to this. Growing up, we're naturally playful. Kids are naturally playful. Like, we get it. I like to say we are just this ball of energy, and then the world takes us and sort of shapes us. And that's how we sort of lose our shine, if you will. So the thing that is very sad is that, like, with all this data and the stuff that I know now, it still will show up. There's still conditioning and past trauma and stuff like that will get us to, like, sort of, have shame and fear about letting go and being playful and experiencing joy, because we think that there's a certain way that we have to be. We have to be, composed and professional, and that, having fun and stuff like that. And my dad used to tell me when I was a kid that I can play when the work is done. And for kids, I'm a parent. I get it. I have two kids. You need to set structure because, or else things just go off the wheels. But that is something that stuck with me up until adulthood, that I didn't have the luxury of playing until I completed everything on my to-do list. Mm-hmm. And you and I both know that these to-do lists are never really done, if we're being honest with ourselves. Yeah. So I sort of took that away from myself, the ability to play and be playful. And, so getting into like adulthood and in my professional career, I just wanted to be, successful. I wanted to do good work. I, wanted to do all those check marks that they say when you're an adult, like, right, go to a good school, check, get a good job, check, I found a great partner, check, and we were doing all these things. And play just wasn't on the list. One of those things like, oh yeah, enjoy yourself, have fun. And so I found myself just overworking. And the sad thing is I was in a job that I enjoyed. It was a dream job. Wow. And that job started as play, just jumping into it. I enjoyed every day coming to work, solving problems. I was doing amazing work. And the thing with burnout is that it will creep up on you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And it's not just, folks that are in dead-end jobs that get burnt out. It is anyone and everyone. And I didn't know the signs of burnout. I didn't know that it starts with, sort of exhaustion. And then, it started with just not feeling fulfilled. And again, I was just working. And if I was honest with myself, I was sort of in denial.
Right.
If I were to say, oh my gosh, I'm, experiencing these challenges, people would say, think that I'm not grateful. I'm one of those entitled millennials, and so right. What did I do? I just kept working. And then, I started performance slips, but it was only things that I saw. And so as someone that is one of those sort of type A personalities that is like, go, 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 I wasn't as productive or efficient or whatever that I was. And so what did I do? Oh, I'll just come in a little bit early. Oh, I'll stay a little bit later. Right. And then also someone, now I speak openly about, being ADHD and neurodiverse and stuff like that. But back then I saw it more as a liability. So I never told anyone. I didn't ask for any accommodations. And so that was also something that was there as well. And then, in this situation where I rediscovered play, I wasn't in a place where, I had I was, yes, I had those sort of breakdowns, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But I usually pick myself up. And so I was very lucky in this situation where a mentor of mine suggested that I take an improv class, but it wasn't for fun. This ironic thing. It was just for, I like to say, professional optimization. I wanted to get better at public speaking, and I didn't like Toastmasters. So I was looking for something else, and they suggested an improv class. So I went in with the lens of, all right, this is going to help me with public speaking. Yeah. Had no idea that was going to be the cure for my burnout and me rediscovering what play was.
Yeah, there's so many things in there that you're talking about where, we do this naturally, is that we think that like, okay, our brains almost like trick us into thinking that, okay, I need to, I'm not doing better work, so I now need to double down on that, and it's like, no, that's actually what's going to cause more of the same thing, because it's a brain fog and just all that, unclarity that happens. And now you're trying to work in that space. And what's really been, it's like your cortisol levels are through the roof. Right? And your body's actually telling you to stop, but our culture has dictated us that you have to keep going. Yes. So we're working against our bodies, right? And what I'm hearing you talk about is like, even with that intention of like, okay, again, right? I got to go into this thing from an adult mind of improv because it's going to help me with this thing. That's going to help me with my work. Ultimately, it did help you with your work, and It's revolutionized the way that you think about work. But what a powerful place, because I can guarantee so many of us, like, telling you earlier, like I just experienced an intense amount of burnout for like 2-3 months. It was like, I could barely do what's on my calendar. heck, this podcast is supposed to be like, launching in October. It's like launching in January instead, right? Because I was like, I just simply can't. But for me to even be able to like make that decision, while I can guarantee a lot of people would be like, no, I promise and committed that I have to launch this in October. So it's going to go through, and no matter what, right? And I'll deal with rest afterwards. I think it's just so powerful that you recognize, like, it's almost like you still weren't necessarily recognizing it. So something was put in your face to force you to recognize what you were doing.
And that's what I feel like happens to folks. Is either you, have that self-awareness to realize, like, this is what I'm going through. I need to have an intervention, or something will sort of come and force you to stop. And fortunate for me, it was something, playful, and it sort of shifted my sort of thought process. But for others, it can be, health related. It can be, so many other things. I have another story I'll tell in a little bit. Again, history repeats itself unless you sort of learn what to look for. And so I like to say things either happen intentional or by accident. And so in this situation, it was by accident. Like I had that intervention. It was improv. It was play. It started to shift things, but I didn't really understand what was going on. And as a result, I ended up burning myself out again. I'll talk about that in a moment. But I just want to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. Like, I think it's like, same thing, right? Like, I was forced to look at myself through this burnout experience. And the only thing that saved me in this was literally saying that I'm not touching any of this. And I'm going to go ahead and, for example, I went to the mountains with my nieces and stuff and literally had snowball fights, and so funny enough, like my go-to, like, so people who, are thought leaders in different spaces, whatever, like, and everyone, right? Like it's like organization psychologists are like, I'm going to read more about this business stuff and I'm going to read about this. My way of actually getting my inspiration and creativity of all the work that I do, I don't necessarily double down on reading books within my field. Actually, that drains me. I watch stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy has literally been since like the last 4 or 5 years, I would say, like I will binge like stand-up comedy on Netflix or wherever, because there's something just so powerful about that person who's like standing on that stage by themselves in front of a whole audience, having to carry this entire storytelling narrative, whatever they're doing. But they're doing like, and they're talking about deep topics with like a lot of humor. And, and I always say that for topics and situations and issues that we discuss a lot, they're heavy. And people tend to build walls when we're talking about heavy things, because literally our biology will start being like, is this a threat that I need to like protect myself from? And humor and play completely dismantles that.
Yes, I agree. And so to piggyback off of what you mentioned, what I've learned through my work and doing some research, a few things. One, there was a stat that was talking about inventors, and their sort of benchmark of success is patents. And they found that inventors that did things outside of their sort of industry, their field, they had 3 times more inventions than ones that just stuck in their field. So again, having hobbies, chatting with other people in other industries, it started that inspiration, because again, our brain's always working on things, right? The brain, is always trying to make those connections, and you can't come up with ideas and inspiration when you're trying to.
Right.
It's usually when you're somewhere else doing something else. I'm in the shower. I'm going for a run. I'm in the mountains. And that's the thing that we, as humans, especially as adults, we forget about. And we think, oh, no. I need to be productive. I need to be, staying, in this lane. And it may seem frivolous to binge watch stand-up comedy, or frivolous to go spend some time with your nieces in the mountains having snowball fights. But that's exactly what we need, because it changes our biochemistry. It gives us endorphins and dopamine. It releases cortisol. And that's what we need to get our creativity muscle back online and get us out of that threat.
Yeah. I mean, like if you think about, right, like again, very basic, but Isaac Newton, well, how did he think about gravity? It's like an apple literally fell on his head, right? So it's like, if he didn't sit under that tree outside, would that have happened, right? And so my question to you is, getting adults in the workplace and getting adults in general to not be embarrassed about play, not to see it as a like, oh, being immature, like, oh my God, like, can we have a serious conversation here? Like, and how do you get people that you work with, those who are resistant to this, how do you get them, like, what is it that happens by the end of it? They're like, all right, I get it.
Yes. So before I tell you that and the secret to that, we have to understand why that is. The first thing is, we talked about conditioning. We've been conditioned to see play as a juvenile sort of waste of time, frivolous, something that kids do. And so, makes sense. If that is your lens, if that is your worldview, anything that is play is going to seem like that. So makes sense why you're going to be resistant. That's the first thing. Thing number two is, when we are in a playful state, we're very vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, we're open to threats. And we deep down know that. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we sort of mask and we're so resistant to being playful at work, because the last thing we want is for folks to see the true version of ourselves and make fun of us. Mm-hmm. So me going in that, I understand that's where people are coming from. So I meet people where they are. I'm not going to go in and say, I'm going to rip you out. It's not like a boot camp thing. Right. That is going to make people even more resistant. Right. So I acknowledge the elephant in the room, that this hate may seem scary. This may be foreign to you. And I reassure them that, hey, I have your best interest at heart. We're going to start slow, and then we're going to ramp up. And then I ease folks into it. So I do activities in the beginning that are activities that you can easily do without really exposing yourself. And what that starts to do is starts to create that dose: dopamine, oxytocin, endorphin, serotonin, where people start to feel comfortable. They start to trust each other. And then I layer on something else. So an easy activity. And it seems like a throwaway thing, but it's very intentional. Easy activity that you can do with folks is an activity called True for Me. And True for Me is you just making a statement. If it happens to be true for the attendees around, they raise their hand, that's the easy thing. Or, some cases I've had folks stand up and sort of look around. But again, you're just self-selecting that, hey, this is true for me. And I also give people an out. When it comes to play, you have to be invited to play. Folks, like when sometimes we want to sort of nudge people and, push them outside of their comfort zone. But when it comes to play, in true play, I can't force you to play. Right. You have to feel invited and you have to step into it. So I give people an out where, like, when we do that activity, I say, hey, look, if you don't want to disclose, these things, you don't have to. And I make a little joke about, like, you don't want to disclose that you like to day drink or binge watch Netflix. Don't raise your hand for it. Right. And so, again, I give people agency so that they, feel comfortable. Yeah. Like, hey, you know what? This is on me. I'm disclosing this stuff. But the cool thing is, once they start to see that, hey, we're more alike than we are different, they start to let their guard down. Right. And then I layer on another activity. And this is the thing with play. It is naturally enjoyable. It is pleasurable. Once people start smiling and laughing, they start to let their guard down. And I want to, one quick thing before I forget, layer on what you mentioned before about having tough topics. When you do it through play, it's almost like a Trojan horse where people already have their guard down. So they're open to having discussion. Whereas if I just like, hey, we're going to talk about privilege, or we're going to talk about, the fact that you're a micromanager. People are like, what are you talking about? Right. They get closed off. How do you then work through, like you said, vulnerability happens when you're playing, right? Like those parts of you come out that maybe you're able to kind of like hold back and mask. And one of that being competitiveness, right? And so you're in play and you see this competitive side to a coworker or to, someone, and you're like, I did not know this about you. And that changes the lens of then how you engage. Like, how do you navigate that competitiveness to, not turn into something that can add a complex layer of like issues or challenges in the relationship? Yes. Yeah. The first thing is setting agreements. This is what I got from my work with improvisation. For those of you who are familiar with improv, this is like sort of under the hood. Yes, improv is all about creating things on the spot, usually with other folks, without a script, and is very spontaneous. Well, in order for that to happen, we have a set of agreements that we all agree to that allows us to create this, what I call a brave space for us to perform and create. And I bring those into my sort of experiences so that we can all feel safe. And the first thing that I say is, one, come with, positive intent. Assume positive intent. We're going to, in a play-like space, because it's spontaneous, because we're not sure what's going to happen, sometimes we might say something that we're like, oh, I got a little bit ahead of myself. You know what? Forgive me. Let's realize that, we're all just trying to take care of each other. And that's the other thing. One, take care of yourself, and then make each other look and feel great. And so that starts by layering on these agreements. It starts to create our sort of boundaries for what I call the playground of possibilities. And yes, and I even mentioned this, some of these things may seem competitive, but if you get that competitive urge, that speaks more to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it as long as it is put in check. Matter of fact, the researcher, Dr. Stuart Brown, who wrote an amazing book on play and how it shapes our brains and why adults need play, he has these play archetypes. And the competitor is one of them. And there, for every sort of thing, there's a light side and a shadow side. The light side of the competitor is that they like to compete mostly against themselves. They like to better themselves. They like to, push for improvement. That is great as long as it's put, kept in check and it doesn't go overboard. And I totally get it. As of this recording, we just got back from, Thanksgiving. And I know with my family, when we play Uno, we can get very competitive. And sometimes it gets a little bit like, all right, pump the brakes. This is just a game.
Yeah.
Totally get it. So, yeah. and yes, that can be scary for folks, especially if you have a competitive streak, or competitiveness. That's like one of your default play personalities, to like think about releasing that within your coworkers and for them to see that. But you know what? Sometimes that could be great. I've worked with groups where you would not believe it. Anne in accounting, she came out and we saw a side of her we've never seen before. And that was awesome. And people resonated with it and they connected with it. And then they left feeling even more connected.
This brings it to the fact that, so I actually am thinking about when I used to work in corporate, and I have a colleague, and he's still one of my favorite friends in the world. And he has been such a proponent of play. And in fact, he was a theater actor and, he sings beautifully. And being in learning and development, he incorporated a lot of that into the work. And he was like, if this isn't fun, I'm not doing it. And, if it's not fun, I'm not designing it. And
Correct.
So you could just see that in any program he put together, there was so much fun involved with it, and ease with it. And I think that you're right. Like, it's like, the pressures of adulthood become so real that we feel like, that if we don't get these things done, then we're not meeting certain achievements. We're not getting to that next milestone. We're not doing these things. But when have you been the happiest? Right. And that's something that's just really been coming up a lot, is this comparison of what does success mean and what does success look like in the workplace? What does success look like with your team? What does success look like? And obviously we have a mission, we have a vision, we have goals to meet. But when there's so much seriousness, again, it goes back to the part of like, what are you then suppressing in your brain? What are you suppressing in yourself that you're confining yourself to that because it's like, it has to be in this way. But play opens up this other side to it that you can actually achieve those goals probably in ways that you wouldn't have even allowed yourself to go before.
Agreed. And it reminds me, I always forget her name, so please forgive me. So her twin is Jane McGonigal. Jane McGonigal wrote a book on play. It's called Super Better. And I forgot her twin's name, but her last name is McGonigal. But she talks about stress and stress on our bodies. And there is a difference between being excited and being anxious. Like from a physiological level, it's exactly the same. The only difference is our mindset. Like our heart's racing, we're getting excited, but like when we're stressed, we're constrained, we're constricted, and we're not able to really perform and be our best. And the thing with play brings us into that like sort of excited state. And that's where we are able, like if you were to think someone that is like super stressed and someone who is like in that play-like state, they're going through the same stuff, but the person who's in a play state, they can actually do it for longer and have better results because they're loose, because they're relaxed. Whereas the person who's constrained, they're going to burn themselves out faster. They're because they're in that sort of fight, flight, or freeze sort of mindset. Cortisol and adrenaline is pumping through the body. They're more likely to make more mistakes. They're more likely to miss these opportunities, to fix things. And I agree. Play is the way, and that's why I like to say it's not just something you do; it's a mindset. It's a way of being.
It's making me think about the fact that when you're in that place of play and you're functioning from this space, you're also allowing yourself to just be open and inviting to relationships in a way that you otherwise wouldn't. But then I've always been a proponent of improv or team engagement, like let's do improv. But the amount of reactions I get to like, no, like I can't do improv, or like I'm thinking about, coworkers I've worked with in the past where they struggle with anything that has ambiguity to it, and because they can't control, right? And that speaks to their anxiety. And so what you're talking about, right? Anxiety and excitement. It's like it has this like same thing going on. So how do you help those individuals that aren't necessarily reluctant to play, but when you bring on things like improv or you bring on things that have ambiguity to it, they immediately freeze. They feel like this wave of embarrassment. They literally have a reaction biologically that's happening physiologically that they're like, this wasn't fun. This was hard for me. This actually brought on stress to me. This isn't how I enjoy fun. I think about introverts, right? Introverts tend to be reluctant to something like that because it's like, well, they typically like to process things. So doing something like improv where you have to be like, just, it's a little harder. How do you kind of walk them through compassionately and just reframing that for them?
Yeah, I think for a lot of professionals that haven't, sort of opened up to playfulness, I have to set more boundaries, set more guidelines, and then really walk them through it. Because, yeah, you're right. There's the ambiguity of like, what's going to happen? It sets off that stress response. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. I've had some introverts come up to me and say, I wouldn't have normally done that on my own.
Right.
But you've guided me through this. And yes, it was a little scary at first, but I'm glad that I did it. Mm. And I'm proud of myself for going through that. Yeah. And this is the thing with joy, is that sometimes it's not always like pleasant. Think about, I remember a few years ago, I was training for half marathons. That was not fun. It was not like it was grueling. It was hard. It was challenging, but getting through it and looking back and like, wow, I did that. I'm very proud of myself, and thinking about what I achieved as a result of doing that. That's what I'm talking about. And so that's what I'm helping folks realize, that play is complex. Is that, yes, on one side is the pure enjoyment of just doing whatever just because it brings us, it brings us joy, and it's like, oh, great, this is cool. And for introverts, it might not necessarily be something where we're all like in a group setting. Totally get it. Everyone has their own sort of like vibe, when it comes to that. And I invite people to figure out, like, what are the things that you would do just for the sake of doing it that brings you joy? A gal, her name is Catherine Price. She wrote The Power of Fun. And she said there's the intersection between play, connection, and flow. When you add those three things together, it is fun. Play, something that, you would do just for the sake of doing it. Connection with yourself, connection with others. Flow, getting into that flow where time just goes by like that. You're so focused in it that, that is fun. So, for the introverts and stuff like that, all right, great. But for the work that I do, yes, I do like the, sort of fun, like I call it the team bonding where, we're just doing some stuff and hey, we're getting to know each other. The other part where I incorporate play is what I call the team development, where we are going to be growing as individuals, growing as a team, and I'm bringing playful elements as a way to help us do that. And one thing that we need to realize is that, one, we're more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And what better way to figure that out is through play and games. And there's this acronym called VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complexity, ambiguity. And it was derived from the military as a way to train soldiers how to deal with uncertain environments. You know, when they go out to war, there's so many things that they don't know. And so VUCA is that term that they created. It's also been adapted in the business world, because if you think of the last 20 or so years, the things that happened, we couldn't even guess that it happened. Like, now looking back, oh yeah, that makes sense. But in the moment, it was so ambiguous. It was so complex. And so what I do through some of my work, it helps people realize how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, knowing that you're going to be uncomfortable, but that's part of it. And how can we reduce our stress response so that we can be creative? And again, play is the best way to do that because of all the things that you talked about.
I mean, even what you're talking about, right? Like, if we think about sports and we think about, parents like yourself, like putting kids in soccer, baseball, and all of these things, it's like, it's not just about like winning in that. It's also about like all the life skills that you learn through playing, right? Like hide and go seek, tag, like what are we learning in all those moments? The dodgeball, like, collaborative games, right? Twister, whatever it is, like all the different games, when I was with my nieces, like we played Clue, we played Risk, and it's like, you're learning critical thinking. You're learning, strategy. My niece was 10 years old. Literally, nobody has been able to beat her in any game. Like, it doesn't put any game in front of her, she wins it every single time, and it's frustrating, that no one else does. But it's like her ability that you see now in how quick-witted she is, about how she's so vigilant about challenges and thinks about solutions at 10. It's wild. Like, she is so emotionally in tune with people's emotions, and she's able to just she has a natural ability to build rapport in a very easy way that makes people just feel so at ease. And she's 10. And I'm hoping, and I know her parents, my brother and my sister-in-law, are hoping that she carries that on, and I think that is also a difference of parenting now, where it's like you want to encourage those qualities in the kids, right? So that they can become the adults that don't lose those pieces of themselves. But it really is when I think about play in the workplace, I'm curious to know from you, can you share what has been, I guess you could say, an impactful transformation that you've seen happen with a team because of the way that you've incorporated play into their world?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I bring these playful elements as a way to train, to grow, to help teams adapt together, to connect together. So yes, it is fun, it's enjoyable, and we're doing the hard work.
Right. It has a purpose.
There's a purpose. Everything's intentional. So I was working with the sales team of a Major League Baseball team. And the goal of our sort of time together is, again, to help them be resilient, help them think differently, help them connect with each other. So I had a series of different activities that were all along those learning objectives. And I was doing this one activity that was designed to help people realize that they can't multitask. Because the interesting thing is, we all know that multitasking is not something that we should do. However, we do it. and then
all about efficiency, right?
Yeah, right. Again, and this is the interesting thing, because the things that we value, we do more of. And so, if we're trying to be efficient, we do things. Or if the company's pressuring us to get more done with less, we end up doing things that we wouldn't consciously do otherwise. So nonetheless, I wanted people to experience what it's like to multitask, to really multitask, because I sort of set them up and I say, how many people multitask? Yeah. How many people think they're good at it? All right, cool. We're going to challenge you. We're going to see how good you are at multitasking. So this activity It's a group activity. There's 5 people per pod, and the person in the center is the one who's going through it, and then everyone sort of rotates. And so what the person in the center, they realize that they have one main task, a simple task. Just listen to the person in front of them, tell them a story, and then have to be able to tell as much detail as possible afterwards. 45 seconds. Super, right? We can easily do that. Here's the catch. While they're supposed to be listening, there are people to the sides and behind them that are asking them things. It's all happening simultaneously.
Yeah, I would fail so badly at that.
Yes. And on top of that, so yes, exactly. It's an impossible task.
Yeah.
You if you play the game correctly, you can't win. But the interesting thing is, and it causes stress. I have photos of people that look like deer in the headlights. And it's just one of those things. But here's the thing. We're doing it through a play-like environment, so people are a little bit more willing to participate, and then afterwards we do a debrief. And the way that the brain works, the brain's always making connections. So, then we talk about like, all right, what were the failure points in this activity? What was the challenging things? How did you feel during it? We get people, I was so stressed. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, this is a simulation. Your body is experiencing the exact same things that would happen in your day-to-day. Like, you have all the pressures of trying to succeed, of all the things that you're trying to get done. And someone, a few folks like, yeah, this is like my day-to-day. And then the cool thing is, because it happened through play, we did it through this lens, we're able to have an honest conversation of like, wow, where does this show up in your day-to-day? What can we do to mitigate this? And I've had teams come up with some amazing things, where they say, you know what, when we're in meetings, we need to all agree that no Slack open, or this, that, and the other.
Right.
Or we need to do this, this, and this. So I've had folks go through that simulation and then, come up with some amazing things. The one thing I want to share is one of the first times I ran this activity. And as I mentioned, I was working with this sales team, and during the debrief, this one gal, she was sharing her experience, and she said, wow, I never saw it this way, but I am setting my team up for failure because I thought that my job as a manager, as a leader, is to be that checkpoint for all of them, where they bring everything to me, I make sure that they're good, and I send them out. However, I'm realizing through this game that no wonder I'm stressed all the time, because I can't get any of my work done, and I'm holding up my team. And she was literally almost in tears. And the cool thing is, everyone on the team, we just called a timeout. Everyone on the team sort of came to her, was compassionate for her, was empathetic, and we took 10 minutes and we came up with a solution for her.
That's amazing.
And then we went on. That happened through play, through a game where everyone was supportive of each other. This person felt comfortable bringing this up.
Right.
Sharing a very vulnerable part of her that no one knew. No one knew.
Yeah.
Up until this point. And then they came up with some solutions. And then the other thing afterwards, the folks who hired me, they came up to me and they said, what did you do? Like, that was some pure magic, because we've been trying to help this person realize that they are micromanaging and they're struggling, but they wouldn't let go.
Wow, I have chills. That is really that, and I think that the word innocence comes up, right? And I often think about, like, if you remember that image from Burning Man, where it's like the two adults that are facing backwards, but it's like the kids inside that are touching. And obviously that's about like the relationship piece of things and all that. But I do also think about that from a place about our own woundedness and how that shows up in the workplace, right? Yes. And especially for women. And I can imagine a woman and a sales team in a baseball league. Like, I mean, talk about male domination. Yes. And so have her to have probably a tough exterior, that she has to show up in a certain way. It's that idea again, right? That if you're soft, that's a weakness. Yep. And so for her, to me, what I'm hearing is that she's been carrying this load by herself for so long, because she probably through the narrative of like society, narrative culture, narrative of the industry she's in, didn't think it was okay to ask for help.
Agreed.
And so the power of play right there, she didn't even have to ask for it. It just came out. It just happened. That's so powerful.
Yeah, agreed. And think about, as I mentioned before, there are folks who have seen it and been trying to help, but you're right. We're holding on. We have this perception that we have to do it all. We don't want to look weak. We don't want to look like we don't have our stuff together because there's this fear, like, people won't accept me. I might get fired, all these things. And that is one of the things that I love about play is that when we are in this play-like state and we are connecting with each other through play, our guards go down. And yes, that is a very vulnerable moment. However, it is needed for that connection to happen, for us to truly see each other. And what happens is, and so this is one of the reasons why it's important to have facilitated experiences like this. Because when you have this moment and you truly see someone and you're like, wow, all right, I see you. And then we have a moment to like start to right side some stuff that have maybe been gone, that's been gone awry at work. Now we can go back to work with this new way of seeing each other and support. Whereas sometimes we'll go out and, like maybe we do happy hour or something like that. And it's playful and it's fun and we get to know each other, but we don't truly work on the challenges that are still there. Those challenges are still there. And then you think you made this connection. You're like, all right, cool. Me and Rick, we're good. We had this amazing moment. And then we go back to work. And now Rick's being a jerk again. Like, because again, we're back to that. We never addressed the true thing. And that's again why some folks have these challenges with play and stuff like that, because they've seen the bad situations of like, man, I let my guard down and then we go back to work and that person is still mean. So I'm never gonna do that again.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Like the facilitation of that is like so core because just like anything, right? It's like you can, and this is actually one of my things about pop-ups and immersives is that you go through these pop-up immersive experiences that are built for like being Instagrammable and all of this, right? And some of them are talking about pretty hard topics and you're going through these experiences, but you're left to process it on your own. But you don't know how to process it on your own. You don't have the tools for that. So that's where, what you're talking about, I feel like is so important, regardless of whatever you're doing in the workplace, outside of it, is that having the guidance, of anything so that you have and you build a bigger toolbox for yourself.
Yes.
So that then that, okay, we're in this challenging moment. Oh, I remember this tool that we used. Let's bring that in here to like diffuse the tension, to diffuse some of that like, anger that may be palpable right now. And then, then we can get back into brainstorming. Then we can get back into like, our meeting to hash out our vision or goal or whatever it is. So yeah, it's just that sustaining of that play, the sustaining of that ability where it's like, okay, Gary doesn't have to be there the whole time holding my hand through like every single day. Like, so what would you say, if we like wrap this up and talk about that core thing of what would you say that if there is one thing that teams, individuals, leaders, can start with to be more receptive to play, be more receptive to the power of play and what that does for the dynamic of the workplace? Like, what would that be?
I think the first thing is to have folks realize that play is broader than we look at it, and realize that we need better tools to help us sort of get through this ever-changing, complex, ambiguous, volatile environment that we're in. Mm-hmm. And play can have multiple facets. As I mentioned, when I use it in my work, I look at it for one of three things. I'm either trying to change the state of the team. So like, maybe the state's low, I'm trying to bring it up, or I'm trying to get them, more calm and sort of focused, or I'm trying to teach someone something, or I'm trying to change someone's perspective of something, and maybe all three. And so that is something that as a leader, we all want to do these things anyway. This is the fastest way to do this because most of the time we have our guards up.
Yeah.
We're on edge. And the best way to bring someone's guard down, to get them focused, to get them connected is through play.
I love that so much. I mean, to take what you're saying, again, I kind of apply it to the state of the world that we're in right now. And, the level of fear that's just taken over globally, and
Yes.
division, polarity, all of it, right? But what I always find so interesting is that even with all of this happening, there's a World Cup that happens with soccer teams come through from countries that are fighting each other in war zones, but yet here they are like competing and supporting each other on the field. Like there's a sense of like community and coming together when it comes to sports and play. And, you see like just play, like even like, you have like Afghanistan coming into, games, like you had Palestine like coming into, the Olympics and everything. And you're just like, wow, like, and then you see people backing them up. You see this like level of support that's coming through and this unwavering amount of love, and to me, like that is always going to be the symbolism of the power of play.
Yes. Right. If we could all come together for stuff like this, then I'm pretty sure we can get finance and sales, and R&D to come together and connect.
Yeah.
Yes, we have our differences, but we can use this amazing medium to get folks to come together. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I just think of it as one of the other things that play does is it also breaks down the barriers of ego.
Agreed.
And, it literally forces you to look at things of like, if I want to win, where is the I and where's the we in this? Like you're seeing that at the end of the day, like if you're in this race, you're going to burn out because you just don't have the fuel to keep going by yourself. But if you see it through the play and you see like, oh, wait a second, we can tag team on this. Like, oh, wait, you got this. Okay, I'll go get this. Like, why is it that, relay races and like tags and like those kind of things, like you see everyone put their egos to the side and be like, okay, we're in this together.
Yes.
So
yes, I agree. And if I could add two things to this, just to put a finer point on it, understand that we are playing an infinite game. There are two types of game. There's a finite game, like baseball, like basketball, where there's a very beginning and an end. There's a score, there's a winner and a loser. We're playing an infinite game. Not saying that we're going to live infinitely, but it's all about survival. It's all about keeping going, which means that if you are trying to run a marathon and you're treating it like a sprint, you're not going to make it. You need to realize that you need to keep going, and you need to learn this lesson, because as I mentioned in the beginning, if you don't learn the lesson, you are going to repeat it. And I mentioned that there was another story about burnout, and I'm going to share it right now. So at this point, I have been doing improv for about like 4 years. And so I'm starting to facilitate, this in my work. And I find myself actually as a partner for a digital marketing agency. And I am in this point of burnout. And I really don't have an understanding of what burnout is, because again, like I mentioned, all these jobs start as play and excitement. But in my sort of desire to prove that I am worthy or worth it, like I found myself overworking. And at this company that I co-founded, it was quite a ways distance from home. And then I was getting into this point where I was having some challenges with business partners, and with every business you go through these ups and downs, and it was a challenging point. And I found myself going in earlier because again, I thought I wanted to, sort of I was just trying to prove myself, to be honest, but I was doing it under the guise of like, well, I want to be a good leader, a good example. But again, as we mentioned, we should not work harder. We should work smarter. And so I was going in earlier, I was staying in later, and I was driving home one day, and for a split second, I fell asleep. Like it was like, it had to be like a microsecond, but it scared the hell out of me. I actually literally had to pull over to the side of the road. I was like almost in a panic, and it made me sort of rethink everything because I thought to myself, I was like, I could have fallen asleep and caused a major pileup. I could have fallen asleep and not woken up, and I would have left my wife and at the time my firstborn, child alone, and people coming to my funeral, and they're not going to be like, "Wow, yeah, we're here for Gary because he worked all the time." It's not about that, and it made me really realize what is really important. And from there on out, I wanted to make sure that I was not, just doing it just to do it, just going through the motions and pushing harder. I wanted to be smarter about it.
Oof, thank you for sharing that. I think that, again, I take it back to what I said out earlier. It's like we're so ingrained culturally in America to think about like the functions of what you have to do, and that thinking outside of that is just it's hard until we have moments like this. And what I do feel grateful for is that I'm hearing more and more people starting to talk this way of what really matters. I think the pandemic definitely shifted that for a lot of people. A lot of individuals are like, what actually matters? What is it? And like you mentioned, I think that's so powerful right there that, I just wanted to be known. Like, I just wanted to do that. But like, you had this moment then where you're like, what actually matters in life? And when we incorporate that, again, it just shows like play isn't just play, it's responsibility.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a form of like taking ownership of like life and, what we're all here for. So Gary, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Like I could keep talking to you
right?
like forever. Again, I'm going to leave it with this one thing of like, when you're talking, like I think about like the Lego movie. And the Lego movie to me represents so much of this journey of like, we follow this path, we do this thing, everything is awesome. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. No, we've been trained to think everything is awesome at our own detriment. And we're not saying that we don't want to work or we don't want to do great things. We do, but like, can we just change the way we do that so that there's a little bit more of that, like our bodies aren't in this like state of constant crisis, that we're not even meant to be in. I mean, what I look at what you're doing, Gary, is more than just bringing teams together. It's more than just impact of work in that space. I actually look at what you're doing as like a part of a body's healing journey. I really see that because when we're talking about play, you're laughing, like you said, like it releases serotonin, the dopamine, all of these things, but it relaxes your body to feel safe,
Yes.
and those are all the things that we need to battle, like illnesses, to battle like, poor relationships, these things like, so anyways, I could go on about just how beneficial and powerful the work you're doing is. And, everyone, please get this book. Like it is phenomenal. It is awesome. And it's again, it's a playful read, and you've got so many phenomenal like activities in here as well that people can do. Everyone needs to know you, Gary. Everyone needs play in their life with Gary.
No, thank you, Payal. It really, really means a lot, and thank you for having me on. This is, like you said, we could go on and on, but we have to put a pin in it, and maybe it's more of an ellipse, like maybe to be continued at another time.
100% to be continued. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I really hope that you enjoy this episode, and I just have one favor to ask you. If you could just make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a rating and review, it's going to help us tremendously to make sure that we reach as many people as possible that you think should be listening to our episodes. I'll see you next week for another episode, and thank you so much for leaving that one review, that one subscription, and sharing this with your friends.